Welcome to Node Mode. I am Node, and here with the one and only PO, you are listening to the NFT podcast focused on digital art. We talk with artists, OG collectors, and the smartest people in the space about all things NFTs. We are, in fact, in it for the art. As always, nothing in this video is financial advice. We are definitely not financial advisors, and the NFT space is incredibly risky, so make sure to always do your own research. If you enjoy the content, please hit that like button, smash the subscribe, and share with your friends. And don't forget to check out our NFT, the Nifty Portal, to join the community and hang out with guys like us. We have a bonus episode today, a special episode with none other than Dandelion. What a name. Dandelion is the co-founder behind several platforms, including archipelago.art and the art project that is all the buzz these days, QQL with Tyler Hobbs. Dandelion, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Dude, it's so great. First, we got to start with the name. You know, I was chatting with a buddy and he kind of introed me or told me about you and introed me kind of in DMs. And I said, well, do I just call Dandelion Dandelion? Is that how they like to be referred to? Tell me about the background of this noxious weed / beautiful flower.
Oh boy, there's so much to say. You know, it's a name that I chose while on a really transformative acid trip.
Oh, nice. Okay, we're going straight to the acid trip. I love it. Okay.
Yeah, acid has played a very important role throughout my life on many occasions, including getting into crypto and Web3, because it was ultimately like, you know, I was the first wave of Bitcoin users were like the original like you know, cypherpunks who are just like on like the cryptography mailing lists that Satoshi is posting the white paper to, and then the second wave of users was the Silk Road, and so that was me. But no, I chose the name Dandelion in part. It just fit me in a lot of different respects. Kind of fits different sides of myself as Dandy and Lion. I'm very fond of going where the wind blows me, you know, and I think weeds are ultimately like this is completely a side rant. But lawns are what you get when you apply the principles of fascism to the practice of horticulture. And weeds are the resistance. You know, they are the plants where you can try to like spray them, cut them down, get rid of them, like, and they'll just show up and like thrive anyway. And you know, they're great for pollinators. They'll like break up all these old asphalt and turn it back into soil. Like weeds are the best. They're the toughest, most like badass plants, and I'm happy to be one.
Dude, that is such a cool background and insight, you know, like I love the thought behind it. Definitely glad you're on Node Mode and not on our morning show. Our listeners there, you know, like they can't go that deep, you know what I mean? We just talk simple stuff, but no, this is cool.
They'd be on board with the acid part.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, look, you and Steve Jobs and all the other brilliant minds seem to agree, right? So, you know, maybe something worth considering for sure for those that are uninitiated. That's pretty cool, man. So there's real meaning behind just Dandelion. And I would also say it also feels very brandable, right? Like it's just Dandelion. No, I'm not going to forget that name, right? It's just so simple and clear. So
I do have high recall for people with my name.
Yeah. It's genius in every way. So no, that's awesome. Okay, so one thing we love to do is whenever there's a gallery that's associated with one of our guests, we always like to just jump in and look at what they like collecting. And I threw one in the chat for PO here, and I took a look, and man, you've got a nice, beautiful, succinct gallery you've created of generative art. Tell me, let's start there. Why do you like generative art in the first place?
Why do I like generative art? I'll say just as an aside with the gallery, I really need to spend some time with it and figure out how I want to display it, because there's so much more than what I've put there. It's just like I kind of occasionally like look on like add another little section.
Yeah, if this is the start, man, I can't wait to see the full thing because it's beautiful.
That was such a low-key flex right there.
Yeah,
I really got to put more time into this gallery, you know.
I only have a few archetypes and squiggles and ringers and meridians in there. It's just a few.
Wow.
Oh boy, I don't even think I have my fidenzas in this gallery though. So like this is what I mean when I say like I just like have not really. I need to do it a little more systematically. I just occasionally I'm like, oh shit, I've got, like, these meridians are really cool. You know, I'll put them up there. Yeah. What do I love about generative art? You know, so much. I think that for me, one of the things I'm really passionate about is the beauty of nature. And the way that this like natural world has evolved from apparently simple rules to produce a like endless smorgasbord of novelty and complexity and beauty and like the unexpected. And that I see that show up in natural life. And you can just like go to, you can go to like a park and just look at the boulders and like look at the endless like detail within them and like where the patches of moss are. And I think that for me, what I love about generative art is that we're kind of exploring and in some ways like reproducing some of the emergent potential of nature. And so for me, it's really all about the emergence. And like, for example, like just like a little detail here with the archetypes, which you're screen sharing, it's a wonderful collection. I really love archetypes. I really like the play of like order and regularity and chaos. I think that for me, thinking as an engineer, it really resonates. But then you once again have the emergent properties where like Chetal Golid did not code in the idea of having monochrome archetypes, like this green one in the lower left or the kind of gray-blue one in the center right. And it's just an emergent trait that some of these used only one color from the palette, and they're like super striking and like distinctive and like surprising in themselves. They're some of the most like recognizable outputs in the algorithm. And so it's that potential for surprise in generative art. And the potential that something will happen that like nobody, including the artist, really saw coming is what I think makes it so compelling.
I love that. So yeah, define emergence for those of us that are a little bit lesser IQ than you, good sir.
I think in this case, it's a lot of just choosing which books to read. Emergence it's actually a concept that came out of systems theory, which is that when you have complex systems, you will start to have behaviors that emerge from it that are not obviously like encoded by any of the specific rules. And an example of this might be like weather systems, right? If you think about the actual mechanics of like, I don't know, Brownian motion and fluid dynamics, you might not imagine things like typhoons or thunderstorms or all the different kinds of clouds that will emerge. And so the way in which by having this complex system, you just have all of this behavior that is emerging from the interactions of different parts in a way that you can't necessarily like pin down to a specific component. And then if we look at if we want to apply it to generative art, I would say emergence tends to be when the generative artist has created a system that has got enough interacting complexity that outputs will come that nobody anticipated. And so if you scroll up in my gallery, I think that the best piece for talking about this is one of the meridians at the top. I'm not sure if this is like updating. Or if you have the ability to scroll, just scroll up to like the top of the gallery.
Sure, absolutely.
And the meridian in the lower center with the blue mountain at the bottom.
Yeah, that one is so awesome.
This meridian 801, aka Starry Summit, for me was a very big inspiration in terms of emergence, because folks who are familiar with the meridian algorithm will know that it tends to produce these like really abstract kind of landscape-esque like feel of like mountains kind of outputs, but they tend to be pretty turbulent. They're often like kind of chaotic. They don't generally look at all like kind of specific realistic mountains. And this one output came out where it's got a single mountain in foreground, and then it's got this like beautiful black kind of starry night sky above. And it's got a sort of like banding and density of apparent stars that really looks like the Milky Way at night. Like it feels intentional. But then if you were to zoom up on this really closely, you would see that there's no concept in the meridian algorithm of like putting stars in the sky. It just so happens that there's white space behind the strokes, and like the fill of this black region was insufficiently dense to occlude the background, and that produces the visually apparent stars. And so I'd say here, the Starry Night, there's no sense in which Matt Delaurier was like trying to produce Starry Nights. And so it's an emergent feature of the algorithm that these rules could intersect to produce something that feels to us like a perfect Starry Night. And I think that for me, like the pursuit of emergence in generative art is one of the things I find most interesting and most motivating.
That is awesome. Yeah. 801, man, that's my area code. I feel like I need to own this piece now, dude. This piece is it's so beautiful though. It
Good
really
luck,
is.
Node.
Yeah,
Good
I
luck.
know. How am I gonna pry it away from Dandelion? It's gonna like never happening, man. I'll just admire it from afar, dude. That is so cool.
You have my blessing if you want to like print copies of it and like admire it. Like I this is actually something I've talked with Matt about, of like, can we just like find some good way of like anyone who wants to like have a print of it to like have it, because I really like that this art is accessible to everyone. You know, it's all Creative Commons license generally. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Well, thank you. I very well may do that. I actually I was telling Pio, I just lost this bid on a piece, and the artist had the prints available to buy, and so I just bought a print, to console myself, and should be getting here any day. But I love that concept of emergence, and I think that too. Without me really realizing it, I think that is why I think generative art is so beautiful, because there's a component of it that is, even though the artist creates the code or creates whatever system, there's a component that is chaotic, right? That's out of your control, because you can't perfectly predict what everything will look like, right? And that's, I think, a hallmark of a beautiful collection is when everything looks really good that is produced, and that is the art, right? So I think that's awesome, man. Oh gosh, this piece looks great too. We're just staring at another Meridian if you're just listening, and it's all of them look so good. So, bravo. How many of these did you pick up, by the way? Is it just the few you have in your gallery here?
No, I've got a few more.
Oh my
I think
gosh.
maybe I've got
Why'd I
8 or
even ask
9.
that? Yeah, yeah. Oh, so did you mint in the experience, or did you buy them on secondary?
Yeah, I minted and I collected on. I've been collecting on secondary kind of since it launched. Yeah, Meridian 801 in particular was like a very kind of lucky pickup by me, because it only stayed on the market for 4 minutes. What happened there actually
Oh,
was
dang.
Kevin Rose was the first person to spot this one, and he like put a 20 ether bid on it. And the person who had minted it saw this 20 ether bid and was like, "Oh, I bet I can get a little more." So they listed it on OpenSea for 25. And my friend Andrew Batter, who's actually also a great generative artist and like produced the Asemica, or was one of the co-artists of the Asemica series, he spotted that go on the market, and he like put it in a chat that I was in, and I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'm gonna snap that as
Dude,
quickly as
nice.
possible."
Snipe that one from Cairo, dude. Adds to the story. I love that.
Yeah. Blockbird, who's another great collector, he's got a lot of cool pieces like the whale in Memories of Chile, and he's got really good taste. He later told me that he was like in the process of signing the buy transaction at the time that mine went through. So it was a crowded line to get to this mountain, and I just kind of got lucky there.
Wow.
Dude, that is so cool. Okay, so I want to get into your mind when it comes to actually collecting. What's your thesis behind why you collect what you do? Is it just solely okay, whatever speaks to you? Are there other factors that enter in when you're trying to collect generative art?
It's a combination of factors. I would say that I like have a couple different uh like perspectives on collecting generative art, and I like to act decisively when my different perspectives agree. And so one perspective is like the perspective of like beauty and wanting to find like beautiful art, and the other perspective is the perspective of like provenance and legacy and value, and wanting to collect art that will retain like its value and significance. For me, I've really moved away from treating collecting generative art as like an investment per se, in the sense of I don't see accumulating capital gains as being the main goal. Like the great pieces in my collection, I like treating them as priceless. And I kind of, for example, like Meridian 801, like it's just like categorically not for sale, because I kind of see it as like I'm more like stewarding this piece to like eventually give it to some like institution that's like gonna like build out like be a good home for it in like a very long time frame, as like a like grail piece of early generative art. But at the same time, this is also kind of a game to me. I grew up playing MMOs, World of Warcraft, EVE Online. They've got these complex markets. They've got tons of loot, and you want to get the best loot, and you want to get loot that's like, you want to like spend your resources effectively to get good loot. And so in that sense, like, there have been a couple times that I've seen collections that I think are actually quite beautiful and are also not great provenance. And so, for example, there was somebody, and I don't even remember the name of the collection, which is telling, but there was somebody who made a sort of like some works that were clearly quite derivative of Dmitry Cherniak's works on Ringers and on the Eternal Pump. And it was actually like, it was an inconsistent collection. It was like a little bit like buggy. It had some weaknesses, but it was, I think, quite beautiful. But this artist was not really acknowledging Dimitri, was like not like being respectful to the scene, was like just kind of like more or less taking somebody else's like concepts and presenting them as though they were his own work. And it's like, okay, this guy's not going to make it. There's not going to be good provenance. People who care about the space are not going to want to collect this. Like, it's not. And then once I like talked to other people, they were like, oh yeah, I'm kind of trying to sell this because like it's just like not really good vibes here. And so I think that for me, I definitely do, as I'm collecting, I'm like really aware of like what are the collections I'm betting on, who are the artists and people that I'm betting on, and like, do I think that these are people who are going to have meaningful like legacy and impact? Because most art gets forgotten, and the tiny slice of art that doesn't get forgotten becomes immortal. And I'd much rather be collecting the immortal art.
Yeah, I love that take. So if we were to look at at your collection, I always like asking this. Mostly, I'll be honest, from a selfish standpoint, because I'm getting obsessed with what I'll call mid-tier, only mid-tier in price, not what I deem mid-tier in art. But I feel like there's basically three sets that have achieved escape velocity in my mind. You've got ringers, fidenzas, and autoglyphs, right? Like they maintain a very high price point. Archetypes are getting close. But then we've got all of these collections that I think are absolutely gorgeous from Meridian. Everyone on the show is just going to keep laughing at me because I mention Meridian and Memories of Qilin about every episode because they're just gorgeous. But I feel like there's several that are kind of hovering in that stage where they might break one way or the other in terms of, whether they get really big or they might, you might see them kind of slowly disappear. What would be your take on some of these other collections that are, priced anywhere from 1 to 10 ETH? Which one do you feel like, okay, this one's got the potential to really, take it to the next level and become immortal?
Okay, so Pio, can I show you to use Archipelago rather than OpenSea, because it really is the best way to view the art.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, baby. And yeah, by the way, so this archipelago.art. This is Dandelion's. I put it in the chat as well, Pio, so you can just snag it there. This is Dandelion's platform, man. And I will say, like, after looking at it, it is way more a much more enjoyable experience, like looking at the art. You know what I mean? It's like the art feels front and center. So anyway,
so if you search for like memories here, you can find. We also have autoglyphs. And yeah, while I keep on low-key flexing, like autoglyphs. Yeah, I forgot to put my autoglyph in my gallery.
Yeah, nicely done, sir.
The response,
I guess it's not really low-key flexing. It's just flexing at this
it's
point.
just straight. Yeah, hey, it's a very authentic, just straightforward flex. Like, here it is.
Yeah,
right.
The response time on the platform is incredible. As soon as I clicked on, like, it's just nice. It's better. I mean, I'm not a technical person, but I'm impressed with just how quickly the platform responded when I typed in Memories of Qilin.
Thank you. Yeah, we have also, it's always fun if you sort here by like highest last sale. We should really put in some kind of like popularity metric here, because there's, like it's hard to find the greatest pieces. Like the Lion is the greatest of the memories. It's owned by Thomas Lynn Peterson. I forget its number, but if we're talking memories, so as an aside, yeah, let's see if maybe it'll just like come up as you scroll down, because it's definitely been sold, but who knows what crazy price Thomas Lynn Peterson got it for. Just going back to collections, it's interesting how, like, I think some collections, so I think if we were to like diff archetypes versus like memories or meridians, something I think is really interesting is that archetypes is a project that I think is characterized by the incredible quality of the floor, where like oh yes, there's the Lion, great find, like 808, memorable number too. You just like click on it. This is another one of those like immaculate emergent grails in my mind. Just like the details of the roaring lion and its fangs, like there's such a kind of a clarity to it. And yeah, I think it's interesting how, like, archetype is not an algorithm that really has a lot of room for emergent grails. You're never going to get a lion archetype just because the output is a lot more constrained, but it's constrained in a really beautiful and diverse space. And so I think that archetypes are a project that that have got like a place in the canon for being extremely consistent long form generative art. One of the first projects to kind of show like how high you can set the bar in terms of the floor. And then I would say with projects like Memories and Meridians, it's the sort of like emergent like top slice of the algorithm that really like earns these projects like real like spaces in the canon in my mind. And there's also this interesting aside with the fact that the charcoal meridians are so gorgeous and so rare. And we could get into like a whole little side discussion of like trait rarity if we wanted to go there. But as far as which projects are going to like endure, I think that looking at the trajectory of the artist and looking at like the creativity and like intentionality of the artist probably says a lot. And like, yeah, I think that this is where, it's great that the gen art space is small enough still that you can show up to events and just kind of vibe with the artists, and they're all like around and pretty accessible. And I saw a tweet once. It was during NFT NYC, and it said something to the extent of, at NFT conferences, the correct play is always to try to hang out with the artists because MFers are the vibe. And I went to NFT NYC this year and I was like, oh, that's so true. Just like all the time that I spent hanging out with artists, it's just like always like the most like delightful and enjoyable experience. And so I think that as far as like which collections are going to like make it and graduate and like stick around, I think that my inclination is one part like, okay, look, what actually made this stand out? Is there really like decisively like novel and beautiful art? Or is it more just like a crowd pleaser that like conforms to current taste? And I feel like it's like a little bit like gauche to give examples of projects that are not going to make it, because like that's rude to their artists and bag holders. So I won't try to give any examples there, but I think it's a good question to be asking of like, what are the reasons why somebody 5 years from now, 10 years from now would still want to be talking about this project? And I think that there are lots of generative art projects where there are good answers to that question. And then also consider like one of the reasons that people might talk about it is because, oh shit, this is the early work of this artist who wound up to just like keep on producing bangers and like doing fascinating stuff. And I definitely think there are some collections where like, right, that effect is going to kick in a few years once the people who created it are really starting to spread their wings.
I love that. Yeah, the way you put it, it does make me want to definitely take a closer look at the artists themselves, right? And say, okay, what are they continuing to do? That makes sense for sure. So while we're here on Archipelago, tell us a little bit about the platform. It's just for generative art, right? That's why you created it.
Yeah. Archipelago is a NFT marketplace for generative art, and I mean, it's like kind of evolving, I guess, a bit towards being a platform for generative art. We're kind of like, Archipelago is still very much like finding its journey and its destiny. It's a project that started in part with like a tweet thread about just people were fed up with OpenSea and a number of mistakes they were making, and so there was a lot of like, we should like have our own marketplace for generative art. And then my co-founders Ian and William and I just kind of decided to go build it. And as far as like finding success as a marketplace, like honestly, it's been kind of tough to break the network effects around OpenSea. Like we've had weeks where there's tons of Archipelago activity, but like a lot of the times, like the liquidity is on OpenSea, so it kind of that's self-perpetuating. So we're kind of figuring out where we want to go as a group. And whether we want to like double down on being an NFT marketplace for existing collections, whether we want to like be involved in like creating more art. But I think that what is for sure is that we want to keep being art focused, and just like our goal is to build something that we feel proud of and that the community finds valuable. And I think that building this like really like beautifully art focused NFT marketplace has been a nice journey for us, and we're just gonna like kind of keep on vibing and doing art.
Yeah, and I mean, dude, from the art standpoint, this is a much more pleasant experience, right? that than OpenSea. We definitely have lots of Lots of thoughts there, and excited to see that people are actually trying to push things in the space and make it a nicer experience. Just one quick question on the platform itself. So when we look at all the listings here, is this pulling from other marketplaces as well, or is it just
so we
here?
we integrate the OpenSea data. So when it is actually listed in Archipelago, there will be a little badge that's like a little A, and actually none of these pieces. I don't think there's a lot of like Archipelago inventory or like listings of memories. But for the most part, when these are for sale, it's actually for sale on OpenSea.
Nice. I like that. The one thing that I'll notice that I'll mention is you got me, like, when I first look at some of these, I get so excited when I see the collection, because it looks like the piece that's displaying for the collection, and then you show the floor price. I keep thinking that piece is the floor price when it pops up. So I get like super excited. I'm like, oh wait, this is just a placeholder, and then I like jump in, and then you see everything. But it makes the experience overall on the platform like really nice, right? It's like everything looks pleasant to use. So super cool. I'm stoked that you're working on this.
Yeah.
It's an incredible platform. I have a couple questions, Dandelion. So, first of all, this is a question on the, kind of digital maximalism versus, I think, just kind of treating the art, as art in general. Do you have any sort of passion towards generative artwork being displayed in digital galleries and on digital frames? Or are you open to physical reproductions, whether they be prints or canvas reproductions?
I massively prefer non-digital displays for my generative art. As I was saying in like the pre-production, I haven't got like my home podcasting set up properly to have massive amounts of art, which I sure you will once I like find the right space for it.
Oh boy.
But I've put a lot more effort into like my physical NFT gallery of like frames and prints and so forth than I have into the gallery.so. And I really like, I think generative art prints incredibly well, in most cases, especially because you can scale it to arbitrary resolutions. And so you can just like, and like if you were at NFT NYC and you went to the Art Blocks Cross Samsung event, and they had like, in this case it was a screen, but they had a 3-story tall, like incredibly high resolution screen, and the art looked so good at those scales. But I think that for me, I'm fairly photosensitive. I don't like screens unless I really like wanted it to be a screen. And so a lot of the like digital art approaches, it's like, well, yeah, this is just way too much like blue light coming out to like want it on all the time in my living room or my bedroom or what have you. I'm really hoping for better e-ink technology, so that we can make, especially with a project like Chimera, which are these sort of like beautiful, slowly rendered and animated still life sort of flowers. This would look so great on an e-ink display, but I don't really want screens, and so I've been tending to just go with prints when I physically display generative art.
Have you considered canvas reproductions for anything? Because I think some of those memories of Chi Lin or some of those pieces in your collection, to me they scream canvas reproduction with like a fine art frame or even just a floater frame.
Yeah, I have not. What I've mostly done is I've done regular prints and framed them, and I've done these. What's it called? Like velvet dye bond something, vinyl dye bond. I've got these prints where it's like the print is bonded onto a metal plate, and so you don't need a frame. It's just like kind of like a bold like metal plate with like the it gets a sort of like glossy like embossed texture. And I printed a lot of subscapes in that fashion. They came out really nicely, and I'll probably print a lot of archetypes in that fashion. I have seen memories printed on canvas because actually Emily had some at one of the NFT NYC events. Emily had produced some memories that were printed on these really large like canvas. It almost kind of felt like scrolls, I guess. Okay. And they were gorgeous. They looked so good on that material. So I've not done any experiments with canvas prints yet, but I think that makes a lot of sense.
It makes me want to, like with memories, I almost want to find these like printed on different fabrics, right? And then have them cut out and put on there. That's awesome. And I love chimeras as well. I own one, and I've been surprised that the price was so low, right? That they didn't quite. I kind of thought they were going to be up there with around the 10 ETH mark eventually, but They haven't quite popped off, but I think they're really cool. And you can zoom in on these, right, too. And there's like such cool detail, and yeah, like rotation. There's lots of, it seems like a very special kind of collection to me that kind of hasn't had its light, put out there so much.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think they're like, yeah, I think that they're like, they fill a clear niche. It's like really like well done, and MP Cause has continued to make a lot of cool work. I really like Parnassus, which he did through Bright Moments, and he just released Tectonics, which it's on a separate Manifold contract. We don't like have it on Archipelago at the moment, but it's I think it's tectonics.app, but it's a really beautiful collection that's kind of themed around recursion. There's no H, so it's just tectonics, like tectonic plates.
Yeah, I was looking at these. I think it may have been K. Dean or Chris Bennett that showed me this, PO. And they look awesome. This was recently released, right? Just in the last few weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite
these
recently.
are great.
Very, very cool stuff. I just have a quick question for Dandelion. First part of the question is, are you a believer that eventually the traditional art market will value digital art identically to the, quote unquote masterpieces of the past? In other words, in an auction, you'll see like a Basquiat or, a Picasso, and then followed by a Fidenza or a Meridian. And it's not, the Fidenza and the Meridian won't have attention called to them as like, and the digital art piece, but rather just a standalone art piece as if it was, a masterpiece of the past. So first of all, are you a believer in that? And then second of all, if you are, how long do you think it might take for us to get to that point?
First off, yeah, I absolutely think that in the perspective of time, the generative art greats will be like seen as like peer pieces to the other great art of history. The fact that that's not the case right now is just like one of those like consistently repeatable little accidents of history, I guess. Though since I seem to be getting away with shilling like my own pieces, if you replace ID 33 with ID 107, there's a really cool piece that. This is just another fun bit of story because I like, Trill was bidding on this, and I saw it and I wanted to grab it as well. And when I realized that I was bidding against Trill, I was just like, oh fuck, this is gonna be a ridiculous auction if he like really wants this. Like, I don't know if this is gonna make any sense. And I just got really lucky. Because I guess Trill bid, and then I showed up 2 minutes later and bid, and then Trill just went AFK for 10 minutes, and then he came back to the chat and block talked, being like, it's like, oh, okay, cool. That explains why I got this on one bid. That was a nice turnout. But it's like one of the, I think, the really like distinctive pieces in this collection. And like, this is another thing for me as a collector. Like, and whenever I'm in a collection, I'm trying to like see whether I can like possibly like pry away like the 1 to 3 most distinctive pieces, because it's a very, if you can get away with it, it's like a very fun way to play the game. Like a lot more like bang for your ETH, I suppose. But yeah, I find it really interesting to reflect on the history of like impressionist art. And it was like, I think that one of the really striking pieces, I think is it Monet? It's like the Sunrise Impression Sunrise by Claude Monet. Yeah. If you want to like, yeah, that one. So this is an incredibly, beautiful and like kind of stunning like work of early Impressionism. And the initial reviews, okay, probably not the best one. I would just maybe click on, probably if you go to like the Wikipedia, hopefully they will give you like a good render. It's Google Images is just obnoxious, isn't it? It's all like
there we go.
We need Archipelago Google Images edition.
But the commentary on this was incredibly like scathing, like to the art critics of the time. It was really known what makes great art. You have like a studio and you go and like map out every detail, and you've got these assistants and you produce this like, regal, super detailed kind of stuff that the church and like nobility like to be patrons of. And so somebody coming and just like squirting paint out of a tube and just like, whipping together super quickly like an impression of a sunrise on the water. The reviews were like that this might be fit for wallpaper, like maybe. But it like obviously wasn't art. It was like completely derided by the commentary at the time. And it is this funny way in which art tends to produce cycles of being highly gatekept about like what is real art, and then getting totally destabilized. And it's funny how many of today's like greats, where the gatekeepers are like, oh yeah, absolutely, like Monet is like, incredible, and like the gatekeepers of the time thought that it was trash. And so if the gatekeepers today are like, oh, generative art, NFTs, these are just like collectibles for children, let me write about how my like shiftless millennial son, who's a good for nothing, does nothing but other than think NFTs are cool. It's like, okay, cool, that's actually like pretty bullish that like your grandkids are going to be talking about how obviously like Tyler Hobbs is one of the greatest artists of all time.
Yeah, I love that. Such good points made. So, I mean, you mentioned Tyler Hobbs. We got to talk about QQL. Pio, I want to try and share my screen. I'm known for not being good at multitasking, but I just have to share. I just have to share my screen because
do it. You just have to say words while you do it.
I just got to keep saying words while I do this.
You got this.
We gotta have faith in me here, and let's see if I can figure this out. Because I want to show my
your QQL.
My QQL gallery, and so we got to do that. So let's see if I can pull this off here and pull this up. Is it showing?
Ooh. It's showing, buddy.
Oh yeah,
got some nice pieces there. Wow.
Okay, so I got to show off my pieces here. These are I probably went through maybe 2,000 outputs. I almost submitted this one. This one looks awesome, but I ended up going with the elephant right down here. So I just had to show off my collection because I put all, I am what did you call it today on the Twitter Spaces? Am I a parametric artist?
Parametric artist. Yeah.
Yes.
That's the term.
Okay, so yeah, for those that didn't catch the Twitter Space, tell us what a parametric artist is, because Node is one of them.
Okay, so maybe I'll just like take a step back and like talk a little bit about QQL.
Yes, sorry, I got ahead of myself. I wanted it to be about me. Let's put it back on QQL here.
Yeah, we'll get to you. I promise. We're just setting the proper setup so you can appear on the stage.
Exactly.
So a while back, this is like late last year. Meridian has dropped. So there's this Fidenza 938. And Fidenza 938, if you pull it up in Archipelago, it's like an interesting piece to look at. But maybe just make a new tab, and if you go to like Archipelago,
Fidenza, which number did you say?
938.
I got you, Node.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
Oh, but you want Fidenza?
There we go. Alrighty.
Yeah. So if you just search if you put in the search bar, if you just put in Fidenza space 938.
Perfect.
There you go.
There we go.
So this is a super weird Fidenza, right? If you've looked at Fidenzas, you'll know that there really aren't any other Fidenzas that look like this. And what happened was it's simultaneously a spiral Fidenza, a micro-uniform Fidenza, and a relaxed collision check Fidenza. And so these are three separate super rare traits that all like landed on the exact same Denza. And it resulted in this super like strange behavior of the algorithm. This is another one of those emergent effects that like Tyler did not know that you could get this sort of like black hole God mode style Fidenza. It just like happened to be. And I was actually this piece led directly into me and Tyler getting connected because I was at the time a part of a group that purchased this Fidenza, and we wanted to come up with a name for it. So we were in Tyler's DMs, and that just kind of like kicked off like him and I talking more about generative art in general. And then you have Meridian 801, which is another like super emergent, super unexpected piece, that being Starry Summit. And so this gave me the idea that there was really so much untapped potential in these generative algorithms, so much like potential for emergence to get discovered. And we were not finding it in most cases because the way that we mint things and we just get kind of complete randomness from the blockchain, well, you have to be really, really lucky to get something like Meridian 801. And for my part, I really wonder like if we had the ability with Meridian 801 to really have people curating the output space, like how many more like kind of immaculately like perfect like landscapes could we have generated? And so that was the inception idea for QQL, is having a kind of long form generative art project where the curation is not up to blockchain randomness, but is actually up to the collectors of the project themselves exploring what's possible. And while I've been working, I have my own like side history of little like unpublished generative art experiments. I've never really like committed to a generative art project in the past, and I really wanted to build this, and I knew that it would like need a really incredibly like rich and emergent algorithm to actually realize the potential of the concept. And since I already had this like conversation going with Tyler, where we had been talking about like what we liked in different generative art projects, what we thought about emergence, I was like, hey, Tyler, I have this idea for like a generative art project where you would publish the algorithm and anyone can fully explore it. Anyone can like find exactly like the corners that they think are most beautiful or more special, and then mint just that one in particular. And Tyler loved the idea. And so that just kind of started the collaboration that became QQL. And so it's kind of like, yeah, it's been a really, really just like rad journey with Tyler, like intentionally trying to set up as rich an algorithm for exploration as possible. Where like normally as a generative artist, you need to be really worried about the floor, right? What is the worst output that could come out of this? Because somebody might mint that and every mint needs to be good. And so that forces you to be kind of cautious in a lot of decision making that you are doing as you create it. And with QQL, because Tyler and I knew that it would be, you know, people like you, Node, curating the outputs, we could afford to be a lot riskier. We could afford to ask not like what's the worst output this might result in, but what's the best output it could create. And so the way I think about it is we defined this really enormous generative possibility space in QQL, where there's like a couple basic concepts of like, we're going to have a flow field. We're going to put circles of different sizes in that flow field. We're going to have some rules about how the circles get laid out and how they do or don't follow the flow field. And then there will be like, you know, colors applied, but it's like a simple set of concepts, but we've built it so that the concepts all kind of intersect with each other and produce a really, really large space of possibility. And what we realized having created this is that the process of exploring that generative output space is itself an artistic process. And I think that this speaks to a general way in which, like, as content is becoming increasingly infinite, the process of applying taste to curate that content is increasingly like a creative and artistic process. And so the idea that we have is that when you Node are going and generating these QQLs and then looking at them and finding the ones that resonate for you and then asking why and then trying to produce more that are like in that vein, and like going on an exploratory creative process, that actually is an artistic journey. And you are now a parametric artist exploring this generative system. And then every mint that actually gets created is kind of a collaboration between Tyler and I having defined the algorithm and then a parametric artist exploring and finding something great. And so that is and to actually, I need to find who it was that tweeted this and just like retweet them and signal boost them. But somebody in just like my Twitter comments was like, would you call this a generative system where there are parametric artists? And then I was like, oh, that's actually exactly what we should call it.
Cool.
Sometimes crowdsourcing that information can get you the best result. It almost reminds me, it's not exactly the same, but it reminds me of hip hop producers sampling 70s soul records. It's not exactly the same, but that's another just example of when, you know, there's a section of a song that's curated by the producer, and then the difference is they then turn it into their own unique piece and actually manipulate it. But I agree with you on the curation front. Curation, it's becoming very robust because, like you said, infinite content. I had never thought of that before. Like in the digital world, we have infinite content versus in the physical world, there is, you know, kind of a finite amount. So I love that description, Dandelion.
Yeah, I call this one the city, by the way, that we're looking at here. You can see that it's just so funny because it's all I did was click buttons, but it's so fun. I mean, I've been chatting with Kadeen almost every day. We just send each other these are outputs, right? And it's a very fun experience from my side because I get to pretend like I'm a generative artist. All I got to do, you made it easy for me, right? Like you made all these buttons and then I click them and it's easy. and then we look and we get to curate what we like best. Like this one's called The Road to Eternity, right? There's that one, and then I've got which one was it that I called The Smile? Yeah, this guy, creepy smile guy. It's just so, this is just so fun and messing around with the site. And for those that are unaware, so here's what's really cool. So that not only do I get to pretend like I don't get to pretend, I am a parametric artist. If you are the one that finds the piece, if I'm right, Dandelion, please correct me if I'm wrong, but you get 2% of the mint royalties, the royalties ongoing, if that is part of the official collection. Is that correct?
Yep. So for any QQL that gets minted, as is a convention in the NFT space, and one of my favorite conventions about the NFT space, there's royalties to the artist on secondary sales. And so our view is that with each minted QQL, whoever it was that found that seed is one of the artists. And so we've written into the smart contract that the contract can't enforce the royalties, but it can kind of inform like OpenSea and Archipelago and other markets what the intended royalties are. And so there is a 2% of all secondary proceeds royalty that flows back to the parametric artist. So for example, note if like you were to mint the Smile and it trades hands a bunch of times on every secondary sale, you would get 2%.
Yeah, I think that's so cool because you really are treating us like we're partners, right? Which is cool because we're doing the curation, right? And so it's kind of part of the process. And the way that it's going to drop is you're going to have, I think it's 999 total mints, right? And 9 of them are going to be given away to winners of your favorite outputs, based on a panel of judges, not Dandelion or Tyler Hobbs, but a different panel of judges who we don't know who they are. Yet, do we? Are you going to tell us afterward?
Yeah, we'll reveal the judges once this is. We just wanted to save them from having their Twitter DMs be just like,
they would just get
their art.
I can only imagine. Yeah, that was a good move on your part. So 9 are going to get given away, and then 990 mint passes are going up for Dutch auction on Wednesday. And the way that it works is it's a regular Dutch auction, but at the end of the auction, the whatever the lowest bid was, right? The last person to actually get a mint pass, everyone else will end up paying that same amount, right? So if somebody initially bids, 50 ETH, and the next guy bids 48, and then it goes all the way down, and the last guy bids 30 ETH, then everyone that paid over 30 is going to get a rebate. Is that correct, Dandelion?
Yep. I mean, just to correct a little detail, it's actually we're auctioning 900 passes.
Oh, 900. Okay.
900 on Wednesday. There are a few that are still saved for kind of future projects TBD. But there's a rebate on the Dutch auction, and you can either claim the rebate in full at the end of the auction, or during the auction, you can apply your rebate towards getting more passes. So for example, if you show up and you're just like, yeah, I definitely want at least one pass and I can afford 50 ETH. So you buy a pass at 50. If the price were to get then down to say 25, you could just pick up another pass without needing to put any more ether in, because after rebate you would already have enough for a second pass.
Cool. That's awesome. And then the last thing I'll say that I think is very fascinating is they talked about this they had a Twitter Spaces earlier today. But the concept of they are working on a mechanism to where if I can convince somebody that buys a mint pass, so that the key is somebody has to have a mint pass, but they're gonna create a mechanism through which there will be a marketplace, and somebody with a mint pass could decide to buy my piece from me and mint it, which is so cool. I think that's awesome. I don't know how often that'll happen, but if somebody is able to create an absolute grail that would be, somebody else feels like they couldn't replicate or get something close to, there's the chance that all of those that couldn't afford it might be able to sell their output to a mint pass person, right?
Yep, totally.
Oh, that is so cool. So don't give up hope if you don't win the auction, or if you're not one of the winners that are selected. Maybe you can convince, Cosimo or those big whales like PO out there that are going to buy a mint pass, right? And they might be able to buy it from you.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, this
is
so
and
cool.
I think that as QQL, I see it as a first step towards making generative systems for parametric artists, as opposed to just like having the generative drop sort of happen on its own. And I think that there's so much like space to unfold here. And I think that the way that AI generated art is going is also kind of pointing in a similar direction, where being able to come up with seed phrases that produce really provocative and interesting art from what stable diffusion or like Dolly style systems. I think someday that'll also create potentially really interesting NFTs where you just like your seed is like 5 words and like it's going to produce some like piece of art, and who are the people who can find 5 words that will produce a grail. It'll be a fun game to play.
That's absolutely fascinating. Well, I mean, I have loved chatting and learning from you. This has been amazing, especially, I mean, the QQL thing. Obviously, nothing like this has been done before, I don't think, and I love that we're pushing this space forward. That it feels innovative, and that it is innovative, and that you're including others in the work. I think that's so great. For those that are, looking to kind of start their journey, I always like to ask our guests, what advice would you give somebody that's kind of just learning about digital art, NFTs, and collecting in general, specifically on the art side? What advice would you give to people that are trying to learn or trying to make decisions on what they should purchase? What would you say to them?
I think that it's hard to give advice in a general sense in a way, because everyone's journey is like different. And I think that like, my personal approach was I discovered generative art and I thought that it was cool. And I had like liquid crypto wealth from like a different project that I had been involved in. And so I just really went ham. I showed up and I was just like, archetypes are fucking great. I'm gonna like collect. I'm just gonna like keep like pushing by. That was how I got the cube. And I don't think that's necessarily good advice. I don't think that giving people the advice of like, oh yeah, NFTs, like just go ham and hopefully it will turn out that things you went ham on actually are like really good collections that are going to stick around for a while. Like I think that was a little bit of like whether it was taste or dumb luck is left to an exercise of interpretation by the viewer. But I guess that the classic advice is like, I would say if you think that collecting art is going to make you rich, then I think you're really setting yourself up for a lot of frustration and disappointment. And I think that for my part, I did not, it's something that I've really like there's so much potential for regret in collecting NFTs. And there's the regret of the things you buy, and there's the regret of the things you don't buy, which can be even worse. Because if you buy something you don't want, you're only out money and maybe you can like sell it at a loss. And if you don't buy something that you later realize you desperately wanted, then you're kind of like, you just have to hold that forever because you'll probably never get it back. And there are a couple pieces for me that's like, ooh, yeah, I could have bought that and now I'll never have it ever. Those can be really difficult emotions. Like that can be a lot of pain. And I think that if you compound that pain by spending money that you can't readily afford to lose because you like thought that you were going to make money, and then it turns out you like did not make money and you were stuck with art that you don't actually believe in, like that's a pretty big F in the chat. And so I think that, depending on what kinds of regret you want to minimize, are you more worried about the regret of missing things because you didn't have conviction when you found them and you believed in them? Or you're more worried about the regret of like having bought a bunch of bags you no longer believe in? Like, I think that's a personal decision. But I would say that buying art with the expectation that you are going to like make a bunch of money is almost always going to be a path to the painful kind of learning. And also, flipping seems like a really good idea, but in practice you're going to get tons of capital gains as you go. And statistically speaking, you are probably going to reinvest your proceeds from flipping in the bull market into like even more bullish things until bear comes, and then you just have a giant tax bill and like not much to show for it. So just be cautious, be cautious and like price in what the IRS is going to expect from you, like as you're going, and don't get surprised by it at the end of the year.
Thank you. Yeah, that sounds like what I did in 2021. So, don't make all my mistakes. That's it was painful. But the one, yeah, I mean, I really appreciate that advice. And obviously, at the end of the day, as long as you enjoy what you're looking at, that's the easiest form of utility, in my opinion, is art,
Yeah.
right? So buy what you like is the only thing I can tell people, because then I am like, hey, look, you said that you liked it, and so if you buy it, then there you go, right? Like, it all just comes down to how much you're willing to spend. But really appreciate the time, Dandelion. This has been fantastic. Go check out Dandelion on Twitter. I believe you're Dandelion Wist, right?
Yep, Dandelion_Wist.
Yeah, Dandelion_Wist. Check out archipelago.art. I definitely need to be scrolling through there more often, because it's a much more beautiful experience than some of those other platforms out there. And then yeah, everybody go vote on my QQL. You know, give me that. I gotta get that elephant submitted. I already submitted it, but I'm excited to see where that contest leads. That's gonna be so fun.
Yeah, best of luck to your elephant node.
Thank you. Thanks so much for joining.
Cool. All right, take care.
What a conversation. Thanks, Dandelion.